Welcome to Breaking Boundaries podcast. I'm Matt Colomer here with my co-host Raphael Avjolu. On this podcast, we interview people that are pushing themselves and testing their limits within art, business, and entrepreneurship.
What drives you, what pushes you to your breaking point, and what got you to where you are right now? This is Breaking Boundaries podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Breaking Boundaries podcast. I'm here with my co-host Raphael.
Yo.
And we have a special guest today, Michael Kalish. Is that how you say your last name?
Kalish, yes.
There we go. All right, so, I was going to introduce him, but let's just have him introduce himself.
Thanks, guys.
To you guys.
I appreciate that. This is really an honor. I'm Michael Kalish, producer of Following Boston.
Yo.
And yeah, like I said, this is something I've wanted to do for since you guys announced your show, and honored to be here.
Super happy to have you here. Super happy to have you. So let's start from the beginning. Honestly, Michael, this is obviously a really special honor to have you here.
For sure.
We've all kind of grown quite a relationship with you, and you've grown a relationship with us over the last couple of months. But let's start with where you grew up, how you got into picking up a camera, how did that all start, what that meant to you, how it changed over time.
It's a great place to start. I was wondering where we were going to dive into this whole thing.
Yeah, we just
let's
jump
start
right
from
in,
the
baby.
beginning.
Let's just go.
Jump in.
It's all cinema. Everything is that. I mean, that's kind of like our lives. So whether we're actually shooting, filming, anything cinematic, or we're thinking cinematically, or we're taking pictures, whatever it is, everything is very narrative around cinema, at least for me, and it always has been.
Yeah.
I think when I think back on where that how that became, there's two things that really stand out, and the first would be Star Wars. I mean, this was something that obviously I'm not alone, but
Big film for a lot of people.
Yeah, as far as I was sitting in the theater watching this thing, and I'm thinking this is like a documentary. This is a real thing. They're up there. This is actually happening. Blew me away, and I think within probably a week or two, like people used to do, go back and see it again. And at that point, it was just completely revealed to me, how this is not a documentary, and this, these things are actually this big, but the brilliance of that, really, put me in this seat right now. It kind of propelled me through that kind of journey through being a filmmaker and what that even kind of means. So that would be the first one, and I think a lot of people have that. The other thing would be Clockwork Orange would probably be
wow, it's an insane movie.
the most influential piece of cinema, because before even watching...
Is that Stanley Kubrick? Yeah.
So before even watching a frame of it, I was in a... well, there wasn't a Blockbuster, but before Blockbusters, you would get your VHS tapes in a pharmacy, the corner of a pharmacy.
Yeah.
And I saw the cover of Clockwork Orange, and without even seeing a frame, this image changed my life, changed the way I looked at anything, really. It just really opened my mind as far as I don't know what I'm looking at, but I've got to find out, and I just kind of dove into it. So I was probably about maybe 10 or 11, so it was pretty young. Thankfully, I had a very supportive mother who was an artist, and she really saw the kind of intensity that I had towards this image. And so she...
What kind of art did she do?
She's a fine art painter, so
cool.
acrylic and real classic stuff, and just an incredible not only mother but artist, and influence on me as well. So but support, I think that would be the key thing.
That's big.
It's huge. It's so she saw that this was something that really grabbed me, and wouldn't let go until I was able to kind of identify what it was.
Right.
So after watching that movie, that I knew that there were two different types of movies. You had ones that were entertainment, and then you had art. You had this other category of something that was just another level.
Right.
And so that's I've been striving for that since that moment. And what better kind of example to try to get your ego in check, early on to just understand, like, he did that. He put that movie out, so you got a long way to go. And
Did you get yourself a Super 8?
A Super 8, yeah. No, actually, right around that time, the first thing I think I had that I was really starting to feel like, I was kind of manipulating the craft would have been a high 8 camera. So, and the quality was kind of crap, but it was the only thing that you could, at the time, shoot and then see it immediately.
Yeah.
I had come from 16 millimeter film training, and once I got out of film school, you realize no one cares about that. And
so the high 8 ones are the ones that have the tape in them, and then you can put that in a VHS and play it on the TV.
In a kind of wonky little kind of thing. And it was it sounds crazy now, but it was kind of like a game changer. That wasn't really around for very long before mini DV came along. It just popped that out of the way.
Yeah.
But it was such a big deal, at the time. So so those films kind of like, it put me on the path of being a filmmaker. And I've never even, for a moment ever considered anything else since then. So, that's not going to just happen, and you're going to have to do a lot of, other things along the way. But you try to just get them in the on the same block as that, if you're lucky. You know what I mean? I think that's probably how photography came along and kind of bumped up against what I'm doing. So, but I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm from Western Mass and Longmeadow, and from there I went to film school in Philadelphia.
Where about?
University of the Arts on Broad Street.
Nice.
It was a good experience in that,
Philly.
Yeah, you got the Philly. It was real kind of flavor to just run through the streets wild.
A lot of flavor in Philly. A lot of flavor in Philly.
The city supported it.
Yeah.
From my big actually film project, the city allowed us to go down to
big enough, small enough
sewers for I think we were at a permit to go down and shoot in the sewers for 24 hours.
Really?
Yeah, it was down there, and we shot a little piece, and it was called Rats, which was a Israel Horovitz, who's Adam Horovitz's father.
Okay.
He's a playwright in New York, and he wrote this one-act play called Rats, and it's just 3 guys, and they're dressed as rats, and but you don't know if they're like actually rats or if they're crazy or kind of what the deal is. So I chose that to film it, and they let us go down into the sewers and
That's dope.
Incorporate real rats and kind of, get that, hey, we're actually doing this and living in it kind of, feel.
Yeah.
Fairly unwatchable, stuff, but, Fairly unwatchable. Fairly unwatchable, but, that's that.
You got to start somewhere.
That's that part, you got to try it on to actually feel that. Like, hey, I could actually do this if I knew what I was doing.
Right.
So,
you got to dive into a project that might not be great.
You got to just dive in.
Yeah.
I think anyway.
Period. Yeah.
That was the one thing I think, once I was, done with, that kind of training was, they really made it, very clear that, once you're done here, you're going to go do feature films in New York or LA, and, anything in between is a failure. And, I firmly believed that.
Yeah.
And then you get out there and you realize, boy, if I shot a wedding video, I could pay my rent for the next few months. Or if I knew a band, I could make a video. And, it just was never explained that, this medium has more to offer than just,
feature films,
which is very, very rare.
And I think that kind of translates over to a lot of different things, in the arts or in general with this stuff, where it seems like there's this traditional path that is pretty much the only way to, go. And then when you get amongst it, you realize, okay, there are so many options, pretty much unlimited options if you're open to it.
Right.
Well, I think there was a traditional path, and then
now it's opened up so much.
It's opened up so much. So the professors that are maybe teaching us now, or teaching kids now in school, are pretty aware, regardless of how they were taught or whatever, that there's many, 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 many different ways to do it, and there's not one path or one, way that you can do it or anything like that. But the professors that taught you when you were in school probably were like, dude, there's one path. And this is the path.
It's called, 16 millimeter film, and you're going to spend $3,000 on a very short film,
right?
And you're going to get it back from the lab, and there may not be anything on it,
right,
at all whatsoever. It could be overexposed. I mean, you just have nothing, but you still have to turn that into something entertaining,
right?
So you have to take your miles of film, and you have to go in there and you have to cut it up
and tape it up,
and put it on the wall and do something visual with it. And that teaches you timing. It also teaches you this kind of roller coaster of emotion on how to like take a medium, and then how do I set the stage, but I kind of want to take the corner here and bring you closer into the narrative or what I'm doing.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how I would have learned that, that kind of magic act, to be able to kind of, the disbelief, people can just they can just fall into your project or your movie and forget their life. So you gotta take that, the roller coaster's got to start somewhere,
right?
And so I definitely learned how to manipulate.
To tailor back to one of the things that you said earlier, that I think Matt and I talk a lot about, is that at one point or another you knew that if this is what you were going to do, it's going to take a lot of time. It's a long game. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's just going to be that. Like, that's going to...
incremental.
That's just like... Yeah. And I think for myself, I met with a couple people. I was in New York all week and meeting with a couple of old friends, meeting a couple of new friends, meeting a couple of new people. And this reoccurring theme... you have a really type A personality. You have a really type A, or like a couple of old friends were saying like, I never really realized how type A you were, or like, you weren't really like in high school, you weren't really that. And I'm like, yeah, because I wasn't that. But when I realized that this is something that I wanted to do, I realized that I had to become that in some way or another. And now I've been doing it for so long, and it hasn't even been that long, but I've been doing it for long enough, and I'm able to be young enough to change my mind and change the way I think and change the way I do things, that it's become this thing where it's like, okay, this is going to take a lot of fucking work. So
sacrifice.
There's no way this is going to be like easily handed to me, and maybe that came from like trial and error and stuff like that, but there's no way that this is going to fucking fall in my lap. So, or hopefully maybe it does, but either way, it's better to have done the hard work.
That's what I was going to say. Having known you in the short time that I've known you, that's what I gather, that you wouldn't want it just thrown in your lap.
No.
What's and why? And the other thing is like, why and how could it be done that?
Right.
How could it happen that way?
Right.
Because all the things that you go through, like you said, the roller coaster, comparing that to just like the whole journey of being in the creative arts. Yeah. And trying to, pursue that as a career and all that is like, I think a lot of people nowadays especially want shortcuts, and they want immediate gratification. They want now.
Right.
But it's so funny because you have to go through that roller coaster that we just talked about to actually learn what you need to know in order to actually handle it. Right. And if you were just handed it, or you got this shortcut, you wouldn't even know what to do with it.
Exactly. Yeah. So going through that work and going through that process helps you to be ready for that moment that it might be handed to you, that it might fall into your lap, that you might shake that right hand or be in the right place at the right time. So you're like, oh yeah, I do have a website, a business card. I do know how to shoot medium format. I do know how to shoot, 16 millimeter. I can tape rolls together if you're shooting under a filmmaker that still shoots film or something like that. You're like, no problem. I know the old methods. I know the new methods. I know how to chop.
And I've sent hundreds of proposals. 99 of them were denied. This one's going through. I know how to write up a contract. I have a template for that.
Persistence, really.
You know what I mean? And then, and it's just that it's more of like a decision.
Right.
And like kind of like making it into it becomes a conviction.
Right.
In a sense that I'm going to do this.
Right.
This is what I'm going to do.
I almost feel like I had no choice. I mean, now that we're talking about it, I started with thinking about Star Wars. I mean, even if you start to go back even... I don't know if I ever even had a choice. I think that this was just always this was going to be my path.
Yeah.
And, I think I maybe tried to fight it a little bit, thinking that it could be easier or more comfortable or, maybe less sacrificing, but you can't. It's impossible. And as far as filmmaking, I mean, I think it's a good thing for anybody to know that great directors, I mean, they're not in their 20s and 30s. If they
Right.
are, this is like a couple of them.
Right.
You know, so it's a journey of life that you have to go through to be able to kind of have that honor
Right.
to then take on such a massive, task of making a film and then making it good.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays. I mean, it's such a hard
It's
thing
like
to do.
accumulation of all the experience, knowledge, failures, successes, and we've talked about this before on the podcast where, to be honest, like I think the most interesting artists in any sense are people that have experienced
Right.
a high like usually unique thing. We talked about this with Jonah on like the
Right.
first episode of the podcast. Most interesting artists, and the way that it seems that you can create the best art is by having like the most interesting experiences or unique
Right.
in some ways experiences.
Well, you've lived.
Yeah, like alternative experiences
Eclectic
or
too,
whatnot.
because
Right.
it's you. That's your story. It's not,
Right.
it's totally different from
Right.
Raphael's story, and,
Right.
and yet there's so many similarities. But
Right.
I think that's an artist there.
Right.
That's what you have.
Yeah.
You're carving out this voice, this identity that eventually, if you stick with it long enough, I guess that's the title you get.
I think there's like probably like a dozen great filmmakers that are in their 20s and their 30s, and those people probably had a father who was a filmmaker and probably have been shooting small shorts and small stuff with their friends. And if you read their Wikipedia, they're like, when they were 7, they put out their first like short film or whatever. When they were 8, they put out their like first long film. And then when they were 9, and so it still was that 15-year or that 10-year ride, that journey, whatever it took,
Sure.
that thing
Absolutely.
that brought them to where they were.
Right.
I mean,
there's only how many Quentin Tarantinos are there?
how many
this
Spielbergs are there?
it's
How
very,
many?
Very rare.
And
you know,
but we see these people, and we're like, oh, Spielberg was doing that at 19. Buh, what am I doing? How am I ever supposed to catch up? I'm 24. I'm fucked.
Right.
And it's like, oh my
It's just
god.
a false
Yeah.
idea.
How liberating is it though once you have this,
Right.
and then you say, well, you know what? You're right. I'm not going to be the next Scorsese.
Right.
So why try? So
And-
why don't I try to just be me or figure
Yeah.
out who
Right.
that person is?
And
Yeah.
I definitely want to sound out the message that everyone should be themselves and just don't worry about what's going on around you. Just continue to do what you want to do. But it's so hard not to. And I think I think it's liberating for me to find I continue to throw out this name, the Renan Ozarks, the Jimmy Chins of the world that didn't pick up a DSLR till they were 27, and look where they're at now. You know what I'm saying? And they still had that 15-year road, 16-year road, whatever. But it's that for me is like, oh, okay, it can be anywhere on the map. It can start when, there are comedians that start when they're 40.
There's no
Especially
rules.
nowadays.
Yeah.
Because look where we are.
Right.
I default became a social influencer. I don't even know how that happened. So weird things can happen to you.
So there was this time
Yeah.
between you graduating and making videos of rats
Yeah.
to
Yes.
to this
Yeah.
to this time
The journey.
now. So
Yeah.
there is obviously this middle. Let's dive a little bit into that middle of Michael's brain where
Sure.
he was like, what's going on?
What's next?
What's
right?
happening?
How am
I doing this?
How do I survive and keep the journey going?
Yeah.
and keep
Yeah.
it alive. I picked film education, and I who doesn't like to learn, and if you're
Yeah.
gonna learn stuff,
Learn about what you
learn
love.
about film, and
Yeah.
you're around people that are like-minded.
Yeah.
And so I was working at Boston Film and Video Foundation.
Okay.
Right when I got to Boston, I was, I think I was still in my U-Haul, and I kind of just was like, what's going on here? And pulled right up in front. But, that was when you could just like blow into a place and be like, hi, I'm here.
Yeah.
You can't really do that much anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
Security.
but they don't really, the rent is so expensive. It's like you have to have a specific kind of purpose to be there. It's
Right.
not just, hey, looking at a bulletin board or trying to figure out, can I rent equipment here? It was like instantly kind of hooked up into a local community. And so I did that, and I thought it was great. And I was doing teaching classes and working in the equipment department, and kind of just getting my hands into a little bit of everything, and to realize that this is temporary as well. This is even though we're learning about film, I'm not doing it, So
Right.
So I was kind of feeding half of the the creative brain, and the rest was starving because I wasn't actually doing it. But that was part of the journey, because I think I had to have time just thinking about it, and this would be the part of my life where people would contact me and be like, oh, why aren't you doing filmmaking, or why aren't you making, and
why aren't you making it?
I couldn't even begin to explain that I was, but it's not what you think. It's not like a physical
it's not linear
thing that I can just show you, but at least now, but it might make sense later because it's all I'm thinking about, so so I dove into that world, and
Sure.
we realized very quickly that even though there was a kind of a film kind of spin to it, it was still a job that I didn't want to go to every day. I wanted to start telling stories. Right. And I think that's the other important thing, and I'm sure you guys understand that as well, is you can have titles of things you do, or whatever you go to school for, or whatever you shoot, and all this stuff, and I think it's really it's storytelling. I think that's kind of where it's all landed now, and that's it. And that's why the medium and everything, it almost doesn't matter how you're telling it. Yeah. And it's exciting as hell.
It's amazing. I mean, for me, it's like creating video is just, and it could be photography, could be any art form. But since we're talking about video here, and since it's something that I'm stoked on, it's just telling stories and trying to express emotions and feelings to other people and translate that in a way where you can like touch other people with that. And that's, I mean, I don't know. That's like that's something that like actually matters among a sea of things that just really don't.
Yeah. Right. There you go. Right. How do you come up with something that means something? Right. And then as a filmmaker, you're really, your hardest job is not even getting the movie made. Which should be the hardest job. It really, it's not. It's okay, we've done it. Now I have to get you to watch it. Yeah. And then understand it. Yeah. Right. And then we can maybe have a conversation about it, because if you don't, then it just kind of comes and goes. And so you get the journey of the feeling, and I think you put a human story behind it, and a city like Boston, and that's kind of how we are where we are right now with social media and everything. Really, it's exciting as hell.
Yeah, I was definitely told not early enough on, but maybe early enough on, that the best photographs of the best paintings, of the best videos are things that tell a story, and a damn good one.
Sometimes a simple one as well.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not as
good point
as like there's not so much depth to it, but it's there. Right. And well, God, I got so many things to say, but there's what you were saying earlier when you were talking about your friends being like, oh, why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you making it? I was shooting with a friend, helping her with a documentary over the week, and she works for Pier 59 in New York. So there's two big studios in New York as far as photo goes, and a lot of people don't know, but it's Milk and Pier 59. Those are the two big guys. And so many people, oh my God, on your Facebook, on your LinkedIn, on your resume or whatever, you work for Milk, you work for Pier 59, you're killing it. You're killing it. When my friend moved out to New York as a painter, she got a job doing the window designs for Victoria's Secret, and she was rising up in Victoria's Secret, and they loved her, and they kind of let her do what she wanted to do. And I was like, as a painter, holy fuck, you are making it. When she texted me one day and she said, I'm done. I'm done with Victoria's Secret. I quit my job today. I couldn't be fucking happier. I said, I told my friends, I was in a park, and I was like in northern Michigan shooting, and I was like, she just couldn't handle it. She just couldn't handle it. You need to stick those jobs out, man. You need to do the long run. You just can't handle the pressure and blah, blah, blah. But then I was like, when I really heard about the ins and outs of what it might seem like, you're working for Warner Brothers, you're working for
on the outside,
Paramount.
Wow, sounds great.
It sounds amazing.
Yes.
But you're at the bottom of the bottom.
Isn't that production in general?
I think
oh my God,
you're working on Fashion Week?
Yeah,
I can't believe you're working on Fashion Week. Right. You work for this person, you work for that person, you're doing this, and then you see that they quit, and you're like, I can't believe you quit such a good opportunity, blah, blah, blah. But they're treating them like absolute rats.
Clearly.
And
but it's almost good, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a way?
Well,
I think you're trying to weed it out. I mean, it's not good at the time.
Right.
You don't love it at the time. I mean,
but it's just like not as luxurious as it might seem to be.
Oh, no. My first, film job was working on an independent film. And, I got there. I'm all excited. I'm thinking, I don't care if it's independent. I'm working in the movies now.
Right.
And I get there, and it was outside. It was actually in Somerville. And they said, okay, you see that light in the street? It was like a big film. And they said, we just need you to watch it.
Yeah.
For 18 hours.
Yeah.
Like this, just so in case someone walked by, they didn't walk into it. And so that was my job, to do that. And I just sat there just like,
and you're like, I'm
got to be more.
Yeah.
There's got to be more than this.
Yeah.
But I did realize that, you've got to do that to then know, I'm not going to do that again. I mean, I've done that.
Right, you got to go.
I've stared at that light.
You got to go
enough.
through it.
Got to go through it. And then you can read it. You can see later on, you can kind of like almost sniff it out before it arrives, these opportunities. And then you try to, put it together. I think you say you try to you see people that you want to aspire to be, and you kind of take pieces of that, and you try to kind of build, I guess,
morph it into what you do,
who you become, and it's pretty amazing because then you're in control. You're at the early stage of that, but you're in control of that.
Yeah,
right. That's a fun, it's an exciting thing for sure.
Super exciting. We're gonna take a quick break and be right
start
back.
Those cameras.
Thank you for listening to episode 10 of Breaking Boundaries podcast with Following Boston founder Michael Kalish. We're really excited to bring this episode to you guys. Following Boston is a huge part of the creative community in Boston, and there seriously are a lot of amazing things in the works, and there's just so much that we want to tell you guys about. So stay tuned. We're going to tell you a little bit more later in the episode about what is actually going down with Following Boston, and it's related to the Breaking Boundaries podcast as well. So we're really stoked on that. And let's get back to the podcast. Okay, guys, we are back with the podcast with Michael Kalish. And
Yo.
Yeah, I think we've been really jumping into good conversations about filmmaking, about how that relates to art and life, and let's just keep it going.
I wanted to also bring up something when you talked about the sometimes it tells a simple story.
Simple stories, yeah.
Simple stories are good. Simple stories are I've been talking a lot about this lately, and how we see it in music, we see it in pop culture, we see it in photos, things that are easy to digest. And that's not the same as a great photograph that tells a simple story. Right. But I think that, or even maybe captions. Like I do a lot of long form captions, and you both know that. But then I see some of the people that I maybe don't aspire to be like necessarily, but I maybe envy their fame or whatever it might be. And their captions to their beautiful, beautiful, beautiful photographs of these beautiful, beautiful people in these beautiful places are like, cool sun, bro, or something like that. Or maybe even like
that's a little too thin.
Emoji or something
more,
like that. Yeah. And it's like, it's not, there's more depth to this photograph. I would love if you guys would talk about it more, but you won't, and it's fine. But people are still like, it's almost like it's easy to digest. And you see a lot of that on social media. These on these big feature accounts, on these big portrait feature accounts, and these big street photography accounts, you see the same photographs, and you see photographs that are easy to digest. These girls with super brushed up Photoshop skin and blown out eyes and bokeh in the background and all that stuff. You just see photo after photo after photo after that. And those photographs aren't what you're going to see in Vogue. That's not where you're going to see in editorial work.
You're not.
That's what I like to call Instagram art.
Tremendous amount of likes, though.
Yeah, tremendous amount of likes.
What you just described is going to be very well received.
Right, very well received.
Engagement.
And it's, to me, it's there's not a whole lot of depth to those photographs. They're just
agreed,
easy to digest. And so similar to music, and what is being played on the top 50, America, Spotify, whatever, is these songs that are repetitive lyrics, are the same lyrics. I got the, it's like this kind of trap rap or this like pop that like repeats the same chorus over and over and over again. And people are like, I can digest that easily. Like there's an actual like formula to like what people like Post Malone do, and it's like I'm gonna repeat the same thing majority of the time, and you're gonna like it because
whether you like it or not.
I can sing along to it.
Right,
I can memorize this song.
That's his job, is to get that into your brain.
Exactly. So how do you feel about that? Because you're kind of, I mean, you're a social media influencer. You're in the social media world right now. Like,
what does that even mean anymore? It's a
know.
strange thing. I'm curious. Maybe we'll figure it out on the show. It's neat. I mean, like I said, it's like by default. So whatever that means, I'm kind of like on the outskirts of it because, it's almost like I'm documenting a bunch of social influencers, and then I just kind of picking up some of the tricks or something to it. And it's all it's the narrative of our time right now. So I think that you don't want to get lost in the pool of sameness. And there's so much of it. And then people are trying so hard to fit into that pool that it's amazing. You're almost spending more time
trying to create work that other people are already creating.
The irony of it, irony is if you take the time to try to stand out more, then you'll actually be noticed more.
Yeah,
it's obvious.
Crazy.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Well, it's tough because the journey to not caring and and being an artist it's painful, and a lot of people really don't want to put something out there if their friends aren't going to love it, or if it's not going to get a certain amount of likes, they're not going to take that chance. I mean, as far as like Instagram's concerned, I think the most, I don't know if it's silly or what, but the people that have really committed to it's got to be this way. So I'm creating this feed, I'm working on it, and it's really high end, but you can't stray from that path now. So the fun is gone pretty much, because now it's work, but you're also working to please a larger crowd, which is really difficult. And
right. I think it's a tough thing. It's because art is personal in a lot of ways. And then now it's a personal thing that's then trying to, obviously we want to share it with other people, and that's probably the most amazing part about it. But
absolutely, and the feedback.
Well, for some people, it's not a personal thing as well. Like maybe there are some people that are high up that it doesn't seem like to be a very personal thing at all. It seems like it's very separate from who they are as a person. It's just like, oh, I like this, I like that. And it's not like something that you see from afar. It's like I've dove into interviews, and you kind of tell that their life is their life, and then their photos are their photos, and they're very different things.
Right.
But then I've found that when you make it personal, it's kind of like playing, like we talked about earlier, playing the long game. When you bring it close to who you are as a person, it becomes more, you can see the passion is there. You can see that the drive is there. You can see that it becomes a very, that the work is
intrinsically motivated.
Exactly.
Right. 100%. And then the viewer, this is what happens just organically.
Yeah.
They're invested.
Yep.
They identify with what you're...
And they respect it.
Yeah. It's amazing, right?
More so than people that are trying to appeal to what everyone is liking or whatever it is. And that's the other thing. Like, these people that are so-called high up or whatever it is, like, what does that even mean? Like, even changing the definition of what that means. Right. Okay, they have a ton of followers on Instagram. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it can translate into
it's a ship
something
that could go down tomorrow.
Right.
And I love that about it as well.
It is something that can translate in a way to, financial gain and notoriety, which I get. And, it is a valuable tool in that sense. Right. But I think a lot of it is just false, and it's just not even real. And it's just all this stuff people make up in their head. Oh, this person is so big, like blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're as big as you want yourself to be.
Well, the only word for that is the takeaway, and this is why Warhol would have absolutely worshipped Instagram. That what you just described is celebrity,
right?
And so these are our celebrities,
right?
And that's what's kind of cool about it. You know what I mean? It's not you don't have to have just starred in a movie to be a celebrity. So we have our own celebrities within
it is fascinating,
this community, and I see it all the time when people meet folks, and then even a lot of times they'll even give their name, and then they'll nothing, and then they'll say, what's your handle? Not to me, but to other people, and then they'll hear oh, you're that, and then they they almost pass out.
True.
Because they just met in an actual celebrity.
Right.
And so that's neat because we can kind of manipulate that. You can kind of play with it.
You can play that game, and
game.
it's good. I've found I've actually turned my feed into something that actually benefits me as kind of like a self-journal.
It's incredible, by the way. It's one of my favorite things on Instagram or
appreciate
beyond.
it.
I don't even want to limit it to
dope.
that because
Yeah.
that's kind of limiting, but it's incredible.
Thank you.
Really,
Well,
it's
like
impressive.
it's because I saw it controlling people in such a way that it was depressing people when they wouldn't get likes. It was making people feel like they had to create different work. And I went through all those different stages before I got to where I'm at right now.
And you had to.
Yeah, I had to go through that, like creating work just for me and saying fuck you to the world, and I can't believe it's only getting 10 likes and blah blah blah. And then I went through that like
angry phase.
Yeah. The angry phase, and then I went through the phase of being an actor and being like, I'm just gonna create work like that whole saturated, like soft skin, like crystallized eyes. I'm just gonna create work like that, and it grew my Instagram, and it was funny to watch. I was like, wow, you're gonna love this work. Like these girls like drawing frost hearts in the windows, and this very like, oh, like what is this? And it was just like, I was like, of course you're gonna love this, of course. And they did, and they followed me, and it was
doing
great.
it deliberately though.
Yeah, I was doing it deliberately. It was completely like, okay, I'm going to do the exact opposite and just create work that's going to get featured. And I started to become a moderator for big accounts, so I started to understand that whole world and how that world worked, and started to be like, okay, so then it put me into a zone where behind the camera, behind the lens, I was like shooting like, this will get featured, yep, that angle, and these LED lights and this mason jar featured, yep, like this will get featured, this will get featured, this will get likes, this will get attention. And it grew my feed for a while until I then stepped back from that and said, okay, now that my feed's grown, now that I kind of have you and have your attention, now I'm going to kind of tailor back to, again, that kind of fuck you, I'm going to do what I want, but also creating this work that's a little bit of both. It's like, I know that it's pretty, and I know that it's a little different from what you usually see, but I know that you'll like it. I know that you won't understand exactly what's going on, and maybe this is a little glitchier than what you usually see on Instagram, but you'll like it. You'll be like, this is interesting. So it's still visually appealing, but it also kind of meets the standards of what is a beautiful photograph, and kind of like trying to like, so it almost like in tailoring both worlds or whatever. But
it's like a musician, or it's like a chef.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's this presentation,
right,
that you get down, and then you feel like, all right, this is it. This is me. I know how to present the. I know, because then you would, if you were a musician, I would imagine when you write a hit song. So you're gonna know when
or you're a comedian, and when you hit that hit joke, and you have that bit that everybody on YouTube knows Crystalia for the drunk girls bit or whatever, and they're like, you're that guy from the drunk girls bit, and he's like, that was like 4 years ago.
It doesn't matter if it's someone in another that doesn't even understand the language, right? That's just going to be just funny to humans. I mean, that just gets right to the core of it, right? But I love what you were saying about the deliberate kind of ness to what you were doing, because that's the that's the experiment, and that's kind of what this whole thing I'm doing is all about, is that, like, can you do that? Right. That was always the question. Can you do that?
The experiment and the experience.
Yeah. Can you, but can you manipulate this box that everybody's in right now? Can you change the perception of something and shift that?
It's a game.
It's such a fun little, thing we're doing. Yeah. And, I think from the start, I'd always thought, can you become legitimate press doing this? If you really laid the groundwork and you thought about it, because it seemed like the interest for traditional news and the way in which you obtained it was kind of all over the place. Kind of, at one point it was like, okay, TV's dying off, and then it was just the internet, and it was back and forth, and then it was like, and then now it's like, it's a moment where I think people want a new meal to digest. And that's, I think, where we're at, is doing that, but who is serving that meal? Because these are people, we're talking about, like, this is the Wild West of creativity. This is. So we're just doing
we're
it.
In
so,
it.
So,
amazing,
so what do these people look like? What were they trained to do to get here? To do all of this stuff is very strange. And it almost doesn't even matter. That's the great part. That I've learned, and I've certainly pissed off a lot of photographers that don't believe that anyone, that is involved with this, that, just has a phone or is that you would call them a photographer is insulting to actual photographers who, I don't know, shoot film or, get paid or whatever it is. But I mean, I think we've seen, anyone, with a phone can produce incredible art. And sometimes it's actually even fun to just kind of see, like, what
limit
you
yourself to
this
just
thing.
the phone and see what you can capture and create on photo apps and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's actually pretty incredible. I feel great about it. As far as what is coming next with all of this storytelling that we're doing, because we know it's in a temporary kind of holding place because we're developing this clump of clay is still kind of flying through space. It hasn't landed on anything yet. We don't know. Yeah, we don't know what that is. And, I think what eventually it's going to do is, we can't tack on to the socials anymore. It's not going to be any more logos. There's, no one's going to care in 5 years from right now that, Maytag has a YouTube or anything like that, because it will just be a given that if you're in anything, you have all of it. So why are you spending time trying to, so that's like very kind of shallow in marketing. It's temporary. It's not going to last. And people will look back on it, just like the way we kind of like, plug in our phones to try. People are going to look back in a few years and just be like, I can't even believe that we did that. You know what I mean? And it's kind of where we are.
It's how that happens. And it's happening at such an exceedingly fast rate that it's almost as if, I mean, this is like a little bit, aside from, this exact stuff that we're talking about, this is something that came to mind recently where things that we use every day now, like related to technology, so let's say Uber or Lyft, right? A couple of years ago, like when I was in college, I didn't even use those. I remember calling a taxi. Or Venmo to like pay people. Of course. Which two really helpful.
Airbnb.
Airbnb.
Like, these are game changers.
All three of those that we just said. Airbnb, Venmo, or Cash App, whatever people use, PayPal, and then
wiping
Uber,
out the cab
Lyft.
service completely.
It's the most obvious thing now. Obviously you would just do that. And a couple years ago, it wasn't obvious at all. It wasn't even, at least for me, I wasn't even aware of it.
Things are starting to lock in.
How helpful Uber would have been in high school to get so many different places.
Imagine how.
Send this girl home. Call her an Uber.
But then you have the trade off. You know what I mean? So if you say that, then you have to have some of the technology like phones and such.
Of course.
What I got away with as a kid is without a phone is
that's crazy.
You grew up and you weren't always tracked and you weren't always exposed to the insanity of the internet. It was just you were just a kid and you just hung out with your friends and did stuff. So I feel like it's nice to have been on that kind of
on both
sides of that to see before and after, I guess, the internet pretty much. I mean, as far as the big kind of wow, okay, here we go.
How do you think about that? How do you approach, and this is something that I think about often, how do you approach filtering out the things that you should pay attention to and things that you shouldn't? Because as everyone knows, we're just kind of bombarded in a lot of ways with just so much information, and in some sense it's a double-edged sword. I mean, in some sense it's a blessing, and in other sense it can be just like you just said, insanity. So I think we have to be just so aware of like what we're consuming and how we're filtering out these things.
It's a great point.
So I'm just like curious what you think about that.
Yeah, I guess I've never really thought about it until you just mentioned it, but I've been so in the following Boston world in this mindset, and as much as I love movies and I've talked about them here quite a bit, like I think I've seen like 2 in the past like couple of years, because this is all that I've done and thought about, and specifically not had to, but it just happened that way, that I just kind of changed the way I kind of lived my life, because I just tried to live it within this bubble and just to even see if that was a possibility. So it's almost as if I created this filter, and how I'm getting the content is that way. So it's all within this world. So if it's not stuff we're talking about or shooting. It's people like you that we're, hanging out with. So it's really not that far removed. So this kind of community that we have is, it's incredible. It's really powerful here in Boston. And this is not just from myself. I mean, this is from, people that work at Instagram. And I mean, we have it's very condensed and it's very impressive. Right. So it's not like probably New York or LA. It's going to be both of those things, but it's going to be all over the place. So we can't really kind of gauge at one point what the flavor is because there's so many of them. But we know here, you can kind of we have everybody's got their finger on the pulse of Boston. So sports, really great example. It's like how much does that rule everybody's life here, whether you like it, don't like it, whatever it is. It's like defeating this energy of the city, and it's pushing it.
It is like,
it's mind blowing, right?
You do have to acknowledge it too, like just how
it's
much.
It's a thing.
I'm not like the biggest sports fan, although certain teams like the Red Sox I do follow,
of course,
pretty intensely, but it's mind blowing what has been achieved in such a short amount of time in that realm.
Yep.
And it's almost like it's weird being from here because. It's almost I don't even know how to talk about it with people from when I go to other places. Right. Like I was on the West Coast recently, and like I just I tread lightly.
Right. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, of course. Clearly now.
And like even people in Boston are just like desensitized to it now. Like these teams are just winning.
Right.
Non-stop.
Right.
And it's like I don't even know what the reasoning is, and I don't even know how we could identify it. I think it may have something to do with the reason there's so much knowledge, and there's so many intelligent people in such a small vicinity that's somehow translating out into just like
it's a wave.
It's a exactly.
Wave. Yeah.
It's we have some of the best universities, some of the best hospitals.
Well, I think that the economy is really good in Boston, and it's been really good for a little bit. So it's allowed these teams to have the funding to be able to, and then hire the people who have the knowledge to be able to recruit the players that will build their team to be the team that they want it to be the team that will be the most successful. And I think that's typically what you find. Now, there's always the golden story of the broke city or the Oakland A's or back in the 80s and stuff like that, where you'll just be like, how the fuck did they win this year? And it's everything in the city's riding on their back, or like,
and there'll be a movie made about it,
or like Cleveland, and Cleveland's whole thing, and Cleveland being Cleveland, and all they have is their sports to hold on to at the end of the day and whatever. But I think that Boston is that city where it's like we have the technology,
right?
They're like on the. It's just like that alone, like that combined with all the other, the tech industry, MIT, Harvard, like all the stuff coming out of the city is just like. And the sports has like put that like under a magnifying glass. It's on the map, in so many ways.
It's a great time to be here for sure.
So that is exciting, and then I don't even know.
I
can't fully explain it.
Yeah, at least from my perspective, like it may sound crazy, but where this started is Good Will Hunting. I think was like the first thing that happened. And it did a bunch of different things. It showed people you could make a movie here in Boston that could win an Academy Award, and people are, oh my God, you can
made by two 20-year-olds.
Wow, yeah. So it did a lot of things like that, but it also it gave the city such like confidence for a moment that I think it kind of like just infected the sports teams. I really feel like the Red Sox, it was almost like this wave that happened of like confidence of getting out of the shadow of New York.
Right.
And it was little things like that really were like just huge. It just changed everything. Friends I knew that were about to move to, New York or LA before that stuck around for a little bit, and they were like, well,
let's just see what happens.
Yeah. It was like, there was a little sign of life here. It was a really big deal. So I feel like that's where we're still there.
Right.
Still giving that movie.
So we talked about this before when we first met up, Michael, but like, Where did Following Boston begin? How did it begin? What was like the premise of all that, and how has it become like? I mean, it is your life right now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It was initially an idea for a show that I just wanted to watch. I thought it would be a great idea to follow around creatives in a city.
And wait, before we get into it though. Can you also explain for people that don't know what Following Boston is?
Yeah.
Sure. I guess I can explain kind of how it's started and then kind of
Right.
maybe what it's become, because I still don't even know what it is. And that's the best part about it. I mean, my goal from the start was to do something and leave it, if you could, uncooked forever, just if you could. And that way it could just keep morphing. So, that was like a huge challenge at the beginning of this project. And so it started as a documentary series. And I think probably the first kind of reason that I wanted to do it is I just had this feeling that I was like a producer, or like I was going to be good at producing, even though I didn't really even know what that meant. It was a strange thing. Like I had done, everything in film production, tried it all on, and it never really felt like me. I enjoyed it, but it never was like, okay, well, I've arrived. And so something in the back of my mind just kept saying, I think you're a producer or something like that. But anytime I would mention it to someone, they would think that this was kind of crazy because, why do you think that? And what are you going to do about it? You kind of, wouldn't that have, come out in film school, or wouldn't you have kind of, what do you do with this information? So I had to like selfishly create a way to do it, because I think the only way you could is if your father was Spielberg or something. I mean, how do you just become a producer? Like, that leap just was, no one could answer that for me on how you went from this to that. I could see becoming a director and all of that, but so I just thought that's what I was going to just try to come up with a concept for a show that I wanted to watch. And that was following Boston. And I figured that I needed a couple of like crutches in a filmmaking sense to make this thing real. Or otherwise I wouldn't be able to do it. It would be just too hard, and it would be just me, with a camera. And I didn't know anyone, and any of these folks that had, appeared early on in it. Yep. So I came up with the two crutches of photographer and locations of Boston. So if you start to break it down now, as far as like, all right, we have a show. Now we know who the cast is. Now we know where we're going. And it just gave me like, something to go with to see if this idea of a show was any good, Right. And so I'd always known that if we could get it off the ground, we could then move to another creative bubble. We could move to musicians or dancers or anybody that has a creative voice in the city and tell their story. So, what I didn't anticipate, and because this was something I didn't even plan to do, was open an Instagram account.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't going to do that because it didn't even cross my mind to. It was just,
you had your own Instagram before that?
I did, but it wasn't really even anything I kind of cared about or did much to it. It was kind of there. I didn't really know what I was doing with it yet. Yeah. So I didn't really care about it, So I just started shooting these stories of these local photographers. And if you go back to the feed in the beginning, it's just us, filming this, and it's here we are in Chinatown, and we're over here. And there's no pictures of Boston. There's nobody else aside from us, me, and the person that would be what I would call hosting the show there with me. And so the fun stuff started to happen when I went into a movie a couple months after I started this. Yep. And I went out to get a soda, and I checked my phone, and it was what you kind of hear about. It was, all of a sudden your account is, as you're refreshing it, you can't even keep up with how many followers. Right. It was just coming at such a furious pace, and I was like, what is going on? I hadn't done anything to promote it. It didn't make any sense. Right. And then I realized that it was the first week of September. And so, while I was running around the summer in 2015, trying to make a show, I wasn't thinking about that, the city was going to fill up in September. Yeah. Students are going to come back. And they were going to kind of somehow see this hashtag that it was two things had happened. Either they thought they had already known it, or they saw a friend that was using it and said, well, what's this? So it's
Right.
like it was like this perfect kind of, that just brought people to it.
Yeah.
And so, all of a sudden, we had the attention of a large group of people, but I didn't know what we were going to say to these folks. I mean, I was just kind of trying to, make the show on my own. I didn't think anybody was going to be looking this closely at it.
Right.
So at that point, I figured, let's just sit back and see what happens. But the hashtag started to fill up with these incredible images.
Yeah.
And so, so I'm like, wow, what's going on here? I didn't ask anybody to tag anything. And we're looking at these images. And I was then like taking a closer look at them, and I was realizing like, folks weren't like tagging every, image. They were just tagging like one or two images. And these were like very low likes. These were not, their splashy images. These were just pictures that they felt were the best ones they had ever taken. So they were specifically like going back to like, old photo to say, no, just look at this one. It's like strange. People were being very selective as to what they wanted us to see.
Yeah.
And so at that point I figured, you know what, I think there's like an audience here that has like their own story to tell. Like somehow they got what we were up to. And so, at that point we decided to see what this community thing was all about, And
Hold on, let's take a quick pause, guys. I'm going to reset our cameras.
Hey guys, we're glad that you are with us so far in this episode, and we hope that you're getting something valuable out of listening to this episode and all of the episodes. But thank you again for being a supporter of this podcast. It means so much to us in the creative community. And, we're blessed to have people like Michael on the podcast who we're creating big things with. And there's so much that's going on with Following Boston, with the Breaking Boundaries podcast, and just all of that. There's an announcement at the very end of the episode about what's happening with a live podcast, which I'm so excited about. This thing is actually gaining some momentum through these platforms, and it's all because of you guys and being around creative, like-minded people, and that's what it's all about. So I hope you guys enjoy the remainder of this episode. Stay tuned for that announcement at the end, and once again, thank you for listening. All right, guys, we are back.
Yo.
And Michael's gonna lead us on another little journey. So
Yeah.
let's do it.
So what I was thinking is this notion of, we were originally started talking about if someone could be taken as legitimate, press, if you could be, if you could have the skills of a journalist, and without having, the training of it, kind of just on that journey, like we had originally said, somehow along the way that shook out as well. I think that's part of this experiment that we're doing right now, is to see if you can create I don't even know, it's an entity, it's an agency. There's something to it that I haven't, that hasn't, completely formed, but essentially it's a creative community that is creating content for that city specifically. And these are just passionate storytellers, so you don't really have to have gone to, fancy school to all of a sudden pick up a camera and tell a local story, because you have access to it and you have the drive to do it. And what if we could just have a whole network like that? That's where you got your news from. That's where you also could get entertainment from.
Yeah.
And, that was always something that was just, could we even do that? So it's kind of amazing, because that thought was there in the beginning, and, it was such a long journey to kind of be sitting here with you guys. And it's really the driving force behind all this is could we become a pipeline to something larger? And, a good example is NBC.
Yeah.
This is proof that that we can do that. We can have this content that is passionately made by local people, and it doesn't really have to matter what their background is, in collaboration with something like NBC.
Right.
Is just amazing. So I'm not sure that you could have done that a few years ago. So
Right.
we're at that point where that kind of content is accepted as legitimate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Michael, we've definitely talked a little bit more on the personal side of things, and for our followers and for our show, we definitely like to brush upon the obstacles, the boundaries, the moments where you were like, nah, fuck this. Have you hit those moments already? What have you done to kind of be like, nah, wait a minute, this is not fuck this. Let's keep going. Whatever.
Yeah, of course. Of course you do.
Yeah.
Constantly. I mean, they're constant, really, and they're just at different levels. But I guess if you go back to the beginning, when they really matter, because those are the ones that can bump you off the track. See, right now, that stuff comes in. I'm too far in it to turn around. That's it. I'm all the way in the pool. There's nowhere else left to go.
Yeah.
And so it's scary, but it's liberating. It's all of those things. But along the way, when that doubt arrives, and mainly it was just my own kind of like internal meter of, it's not that I don't care about it, but how could anyone else possibly care about this by now? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so those are the moments that I think you can talk yourself out of your own way.
Right.
So every time, I would say just about every time these major ones would happen, that I would then consider, like, do you keep going? What do I do with this thing? Do I just press pause for a moment?
Yeah.
It would either be in person or a DM, or something would come across that would be the fuel to keep going, always.
Just
and it would always be just something small, and it would be people that were really invested, that were just thanking me for just doing this thing. And at that point, I'm like, wow, are you kidding me? And this is like, yeah, it's not just me. I can't. I'm gonna keep going. It was like. At that point, you didn't want to let other people down as well, and it actually kind of, pushed me to do these things. And the other thing would be moms.
Yeah.
It's always moms, right?
Shout out moms.
Moms. Moms that would contact me via DM, and they would say things like, I'm not sure you're aware, but you have responsibilities in doing what you're doing, either running a hub or showcasing people in a community, whatever it is. You have two responsibilities: to equally represent boys and girls. It's probably going to be very easy for you to reach out to your male friends to say, come help me out. But you've got to go, especially in a photography community where it might be male kind of
dominated.
Yeah, absolutely. That it's my job to go out of my way to really find the equally talented folks out there.
Yeah.
The other stuff is the dangerous stuff. Photos of people on rooftops, subway, dangerous places that you have to make a choice very early on in what we're doing. Are you showing that, or are you not showing that? Yeah. And that's it. So if someone, a young kid, gets hurt and he got that idea from a photo he saw on your feed, I mean, I guess that's how that happens. So it's really like a sense of responsibility for what you're showing.
You seem to be at the level of Instagram right now where sure, what grabs attention, and over time maybe you kind of know, like,
the colorful stuff.
This is the colorful stuff, for
the less artsy stuff,
the cityscapes and the sunsets and the whatever, like, okay, this is gonna pull feed, whatever, but you still are choosing to kind of feature whatever the fuck you want. Indeed. At this point,
that's got to be right.
Yeah.
I mean, the hardest job that I've had here is to make this thing, even though it's kind of all about me, it's not about me at all. So it's that fine line.
Other people.
Yeah, it has to be, or else people would just be like, what's this guy talking about again? It's just enough of that. So it's just, how do you do that? How do you find your voice in something, but it's not just driving people nuts.
I think that's a big thing with all of this is it's never, yes, there's pieces about, you, in like the stuff that you make and the art that you make, or with following Boston for you, but it's never really about you in a sense. It's about how it is being shared and how it is affecting fellow people.
Right.
And I think that's like the most exciting thing about this, and that's what I think at its core, that is what I was kind of touching upon earlier. Like that's what art is.
Yeah.
It's like to share, capturing something, whether it's entertainment purposes or maybe on a deeper level, it's connecting with someone emotionally, feeling, or
you feel like you have a responsibility to the others.
Yeah, for sure. And it's that's what it's about, and sharing something beautiful with other people. I think that's just
right.
That's what it's all about.
And what it is you're part of an ongoing dialogue,
right,
as well.
Yeah,
that's what makes Instagram kind of interesting, and that's why I try to do this feed a little bit differently. I try to just have it go in kind of like moods or kind of feels. And right. I hear from people in other cities that they've never even been to Boston. They can kind of tell like what our mood is just on the pictures we're posting, or if your sports teams won or lost, even though we didn't show any of that. It's just our overall vibe. It's kind of all rolls together. And then you have Instagram, so you've got the ongoing dialogue of that, the actual, real estate of this is what we have. So I was kind of bored with like traditional feature hubs that were, here it is again, whoa, here's another, just, it's, very predictable and very predictable. So I really wanted to just change that up, but I mean, how do you even do that? What does that mean? How do you do that? And I thought like maybe if you did it a little more editorial and you looked at it as opposed to just, posts, this is a view of what we're looking at right now. This is what we're all looking at. This is what the city is interested in. And so that started to take shape. And, what I've kind of deliberately done and then surprisingly, not deliberately seen is the connection of the images on this feed. So, sometimes I'll nudge it that way and then just get out of the way of it. And I know that's like super vague, but we could talk about whatever that would mean. But we talk about like feature accounts that would just show an image or something like that. I think where we've found our kind of sweet spot is the relation of images together.
Yeah,
right. It's like the overall curating of stuff, even if it's a promotion for something. How does that live next to what was before and after? Is the continuing dialogue, the narrative of kind of this whole thing. And then if you have a fresh set of eyes and you're looking at the images, sometimes you then see relations that were not deliberate, but we're all swimming in the same pool. So of course they're gonna cross over, and it's gonna be Dark Side of the Moon with Wizard of Oz. Of course that's going to be. Why would that not? We're all, doing the same level stuff. So, so we're seeing that like all the time, which is kind of cool. Doing that. So, but it's, again, every time you kind of talk about the cool things of Instagram, then I can't even tell you how many times we sit around and talk about things that we want to do in following Boston. And then you got to stuff that idea into this box, this small box called Instagram. And it just drives me nuts because then it's like, all right, I know it's going to end up there, but let's go back to the idea before you had to water it down and cut it up and and because I think that was probably more interesting than this. So
100%.
It's got its pros and cons, I guess, right?
Like you can take multiple pictures of like Ryan's Leica gallery show, but unless you're there, it's like being there and seeing that show like in person was incredible, and that's much bigger than something you can fit in Instagram. But you have to take a picture to go, okay, this is Instagram.
Yeah, you did it. You were there. I guess that's the proof, right?
Yeah.
So that's the fun part,
So, big things for following Boston. Big things going forward. Big things that have happened recently that have made you feel like, because like you said, like, once and I've kind of felt the same way, and I'm sure you felt the same way. I have a couple of gigs lined up, or I've worked so much, or so much has happened in January, so much has happened in December, whatever. Feeling fucking good right now, you know? But March might be a dry month. It won't be.
Right.
But if it
I see what
was,
you're saying, yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Right,
Then it's
yeah.
like, damn, like, what am I doing? What's going on? How am I going to do this? What's going
The
on?
unknown.
Yeah,
is
the
scary
unknown.
for an artist, right? That's
Sure is.
What do you do with
Yeah.
your time? It could be frightening.
Gotta lean into it.
Yeah. I've just luckily I'd say about a year or so ago this thing took on a life and a momentum of its own.
Right.
So I didn't have to get up and kind of walk it every morning. You know, it was already
Right.
up before me.
Yeah.
So it made it
Just doing
easier.
laps.
You know,
Yeah.
of course
Yeah.
I can't tap out of it. It's
Warm-up
already it's
time.
already going. You know, so
Yeah.
you know, so that makes it a lot easier now. You know,
Yeah.
now that that's up and running.
Yeah.
And so then, the question is, what do you do with it? If you build this vehicle, you know, where are we driving it to? You know, so that's where it is right now. It's a really exciting time. So I just see it like breaking up into the kind of three things that we do that we're really passionate about, which is of course the video, which is telling stories, of
Yep.
course the video production of that, the social aspect, Instagram, obviously the engagement, and then live events and partnering with the city. These are like the three kind of
Tears, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of naturally just showing me how you focus on something like this. And then you can go ahead and start to break it down and say, all right, well, what do we do with that and this city? And once you've done that, now we can go ahead and look at the other cities. And so
Right.
you know, we're live in 9 cities, but you know, this is like the real world of it. This is the test to see, do we go to another city and go this, you know, all in with it, you know, or do we build this model and kind of kick the ball down the road and someone else takes it and does a version of it over there. So it's not just us saying, hey, you got to do it like this.
Yeah,
You know, another
yeah.
city might be like, no, that doesn't interest us, but we want to do this with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's great because essentially you would then have this, you know, view of all of it at some point, which would be the publication of it, the overall kind of face of this creative movement.
Right.
And you could then see the cities in that way. And
Right.
and when you say like, you know, what does that even like look like? What does it end up in?
Yeah.
I think it's like everything. I think it's a print, it's a web, it's like every
All encompassing, yeah.
yeah, it's like every medium basically, and it's like a subscription maybe, or it's a building that you have a membership to. You know, that's where I see this thing going. You know, is a community, but an actual one that's something we can go hang out in. Not as much,
Right. It's
you
a
know.
little more tangible.
Yeah, and not like a meet where we're just going to go and you're going to get me there and here we are and wait a minute, everybody's just going to disperse really quick and I'm not going to see you again because there's no end game. It's like, why did you even get me here? You know, there's no point to that. So, you know, I think coming up with programming and rounding people up and keeping in one kind of like, hey, we live here for an artist is great because you can just stretch out at that point. So we've found that comfort with hotels, which is the just weirdest thing ever for a filmmaker to even like talk about that. Like why, you know, why?
Yeah.
But the best ideas have come that way, you know, they're always a DM and they always start the same way. And they're like, so you're not going to want to do this. You know, I see what you're doing. It's, you know, it's really great with the documentaries and everything, but we have an idea on how that could mold itself and kind of, wow, now you're part of another industry.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, then you look at that and say, well, what else could we stick to? What else can we put under the umbrella? And, you know, it can't just be anything, you know, because immediately if you just try to, you know, hey, would this fit? You put it under there and you're like, no, not really, because not like it couldn't, but let's say we announce that that's under the umbrella. Like, do you care?
Right.
You know, or is it just, all right, that's there, you know, it's all got to have that like, okay, yeah, I see it. I see why. I see that that's
Like how they fit together.
I see it. Right. Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Anything else?
You're just being kind by saying that. You're fascinating.
Oh,
Can
thank you.
we talk about you now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sure.
On the next episode?
Yeah.
I'll have to come back to that.
No, it's really interesting that you would start this and how it's grown and the whole following Detroit and
Thank you.
and how I didn't even know that was a thing until I went to Detroit.
Until you went there, and then I was like stealing your images. And
Yeah.
Those are mine.
I was like, oh, they're getting featured. They're getting
Right,
featured.
right.
So I think it has mad potential, and
Thank
I
you.
can't wait to see where it goes from here.
Appreciate
and
that.
and how far it's come, and just being part of this is
It's exciting.
Yeah,
it's
I
an exciting
mean,
time for
this is
everybody.
great.
I just
I'm
love it.
honored,
Thank
honestly,
you.
to be part of it. And,
Thank you.
You know,
It means a lot. I appreciate that. You guys are, the perfect example of what's so great about this time and what's so great about this city and everything. It's, people are going for it right now, and when you have that, then it's time to collaborate with other folks
Right.
and do even bigger things.
well, and no matter
Right.
where you are, I mean, it's crazy when I find out, this person that I've admired for so long, they live in like middle of nowhere Utah, or they live in Montana, and it's like, because of the internet, it's like people are like going for it no matter where they live. People are going for it. They live in Flint, and they're like, I'm going for it.
Right. It's
And
that time.
I
right?
love that,
Yeah.
and
You can feel it, right?
I identify with people that are in that kind of like frame, like mindset, because it, in a lot of ways, it's against the grain.
Yeah.
Right.
To like kind of really just do what you really want to do and what you love to do, and try to really make that your life. And
Right.
I mean, I just think it's amazing that.
Shape your life in that way.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I think it's a scary thing to do, but like you got to do it, and then and it inspires other people when you do that.
Or you don't gotta do it. I mean, you could quit
You don't
tomorrow.
have
You
to.
could quit tomorrow.
Yeah.
I could quit tomorrow.
thought about it.
We could all
Yeah.
work for UPS, and it'd
Yeah.
be a great old
Right.
time.
I thought
you
about
know?
it, but it's too much. You know what it is? It's too much fun.
Yeah.
And when it's, isn't that the name
And
of the
what
game?
else- what else are we
fun.
doing?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just fun. I
Yeah.
enjoy it. So
Make-
I mean, what more can you ask for?
There's so much potential with all of this.
It's the thing that fills me the most, for
Right.
sure. Like
Right,
it,
yeah.
it does me the most justice. It does me the most. Okay,
interesting.
this is what
Yeah.
I'm doing, and I'm pretty content with what I'm on. That path.
Right.
No, it's fascinating.
And I think it's, you kind of mentioned that some of the stories, some of the simple stories are ones that are the best.
Yeah.
And I would say for this kind of thing, it is pretty simple. Like what a lot of, the artists that we work with or want to work with are doing. They're doing something that they feel fulfilled doing. And that's
Right.
simple. And they want to share that and connect that with other people. And, create, a lot of people want to create a living out of that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's not complicated, and it shouldn't be.
Right.
And, when people have the faith and the desire to go forward with that, amongst all these doubts and, just unknowns that we talked
Obstacles.
about,
Life.
obstacles.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the thing,
Yeah.
that's the part that's beautiful about it.
Right.
And I think that's when you kind of recognize that, or you have that perspective on it, whatever happens is going to happen, and it's going
Yeah.
to keep going. And
It's
that's
interesting.
it. you
Yeah.
know? And it's awesome.
Photographers are weird too.
Yeah.
They really are. They're strange. It's a strange group. They just are. You
Yeah.
know, and I know this only because when I do this, I have this little hidden Easter egg within these episodes that we do, and I ask each photographer to tell me what their definition of photography is in one word. And there's never been any repeats, which is just bizarre. And I think I've asked like 30 plus people, like, what is, to identify?
It's a good question.
It's so personal. And that's photographers. They're very, they keep it close, but they're willing to share it with you. And it's it's a great group. I mean, super creative, and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What would you
For the most
say?
part.
What would you say to his question? For you, Raphael.
It's me.
It's you.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah.
It's a very selfish thing for me. I mean, it's turned more into being something for others, or telling other people stories, or figuring out how to get people to to market myself, to be like, oh, what do I do? Asking myself, what do I do? What's like my thing? Like, and it's like, yeah, it's telling people stories. But along the way, it's sharing my own story, and it is a very personal journey, and it is it is the thing that makes me the most happy. It doesn't really matter to me if it makes Matt happy that I shoot photos, or if it makes Michael happy that I shoot photos. It makes me happy to do this.
Right.
And it's the thing that has gotten me to the place where I am today, and it's pretty much shaped my entire life. So it's me. And I think that a lot of people love to say, oh, it's for others, it's for others. Oh, like I'm constantly doing these projects. I'm constantly doing this non-for-profit stuff and going out and journaling protests and sharing and talking about this, New York Times, whatever. But for me, at least right now, at where I'm at, it's a very selfish act, and it's very much for me, and I'm not afraid to be like, oh, it is or isn't. It's just the way it is.
I feel like
cool.
this has turned into a support group now. So
Right.
I'm glad you've come forward with this this confession. And I think others will now as well.
Yeah.
I think
Totally.
they're going to be. No, but it's true though, isn't it? It's kind of weird.
What would it be for you, Michael?
Yeah.
Like, we'll say
yes.
filmmaking instead, because it's more.
It's always been the same, and still no one had said it, but it's mood. That's it. Just
Mood.
You
Yeah.
either have it or you don't. Is there a mood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I think overall, whatever the art is. It's either interesting or it's not. So
Right.
anything else is your definition, and
Right.
so you gotta have that.
Does that mood attract? Does it click or does it not
Yeah.
click? And when it doesn't click, it's like, hey, buddy, it
Wrong
doesn't
mood.
click.
Wrong,
Yeah,
I mean,
wrong
you
mood.
know this as well as anybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He really does. Yeah.
It's not there. If it's not there, it's
I think
not
that's
there.
amazing. For me, I would say, with filmmaking and, I like photography as well. But for me, it's just freedom.
Freedom.
I think that's what
we've talked about
I think
that
that's what
before,
everyone
yeah.
really,
Yeah.
maybe not everyone, I don't want to like group everyone in, but I think for most people, that's truly what they want.
Yeah.
Freedom from, it doesn't even matter, but like freedom from like what other people or like societal things, like what you have to do, or
What you think you have to do.
what you think you have to do, and you truly like you don't really have to do anything that unless you kind of justify it to yourself in a sense.
It's a Zen thing. This
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
photography, visual, filmmaking thing. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I encourage if there's anyone that's young and on the fence as far as
Or they're working 14 hours a day and they're just
go for
like
it.
so
Yeah,
tired
do
of
it.
that.
Just do it.
One picture a
Right.
day. One picture a day. One
Yeah.
film a day.
Yeah, it's
One
true.
video
Small
a day.
steps. Yeah.
Yeah,
One
it's true.
recording a day.
That's
Just
the
one.
part that's hard to wrap your head around, but it is the most rewarding if you do.
Sure.
And you take the action. There's a book that I'm reading right now called The Slight Edge. Super good book. It's by this guy Jeff Olson, and he just talks about doing these small things every day that accumulate. And at the beginning, they don't there's the positive side of the slight edge and the negative side. And the positive side is you're doing those things that are really helpful to you, like creating art,
Right.
or exercising or
Right.
writing, doing therapeutic things in that sense, meditating. And then there's negative side of things, doing things that are not good for you. And
Right.
every little thing just compounds. In the beginning, the lines are almost the same. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, the positive side just shoots up and the negative side just shoots way down.
Right.
And there's a major gap in between both of them. And you kind of got to decide, okay, am I going to do those small things that no one's really going to thank me for in the beginning?
Right.
And we talked about this before. It's all about the long game.
Right.
And after, what Michael talked about, how these directors or these people that are older, that they're on the positive side of that, where they've just had so many accumulated small positive actions
Right.
that they've done and so much work that they put in, that now it's paying off because it's just compounding every single time.
Right.
I think a huge thing you got to also keep in mind is staying open.
Right.
Yeah.
People have an idea of like this dream, kind of what it looks like, and you're going for it. And I always thought that my dream was to make a movie.
Right.
Like a feature film, and then I worked my whole life to get to that point. And then when I was at that point where I could actually conceive of doing such a thing, it was like the last thing in the world I wanted to do. It was the worst decision I could have made with my life, the worst investment, everything. So it was, and I was okay with that. But I would imagine some people will be like, no, you've got to push forward and do that thing that doesn't make sense right now. So it's staying open to, by the time you get to that point, it may not look like what you thought.
Oh,
Sure.
It surely won't.
It surely won't. You hope it won't, because then it's interesting and you're there, and it's, now it's almost like you're starting and you're comfort zone. You know?
Sure.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, it's really good.
Exactly.
Do you want to plug some stuff right now?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we should talk about that. We're going to hopefully take this on the road, guys. Can we announce this here? That we're going to be able to get this show and out into the public and people will be able to see this.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we're working
big
on
things in the works.
A couple of opportunities, and we'll have one coming up in a few weeks that we will mention.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be with Industrious, which is a workspace.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have that on the 14th of March. More information will be coming, but I think it'll be a live show. Following Boston event, but you guys will be doing a live event there.
Yeah.
And I think really this is just a warm up for the month of May, where we're going to be hooking up with Hotel Studio Alston and Boston Calling Festival.
Boston Calling Festival.
What we can do about having you guys perhaps broadcast from the hotel during the festival, and see if we can maybe pull some people in and just have a
get
a
Anderson
good
Paak
old time.
coming over.
I think that would be great. I think
Yeah.
we'll start there and
reach out to Anderson.
Yeah, so
Shout
we'll
out
be
Anderson.
followingboston.com. We'll have a lot more information actually very soon on that. And this has been a real hoot, guys. Thank you for.
Hey, it was a pleasure having you, Michael. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all your, all the stuff that you've been through, all your experiences, and the ideas and everything that's in the works. And I'm stoked, and I hope other people are too.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Hell yeah, that's a wrap. See you guys.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Breaking Boundaries podcast. We appreciate every listener out there, and we hope that we can continue to provide value and inspiration as you move forward in your lives. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, rate and review, as that helps us out as we strive to make the podcast bigger and reach more people across more platforms. If there's anything we can do to improve the podcast, or if there's any suggestions, please don't hesitate to let us know. We're here for you. Thank you for listening, and continue to break your boundaries.